One. In today's episode, I'm going to ask a question and answer it, being, is the Australian dream dead? So it's a really interesting question because if you search anything to do with this online, everything will basically tell you that the Australian dream's dead, home ownership's not a possibility, and that the sky's going to fall and everyone's going to struggle. But I'm going to actually analyse what, first of all, the Australian dream is, the numbers behind it, whether this Australian dream is still possible, and if so, how to reach the Australian dream. Let's get into it. Look, let's start with, first of all, what is the Australian dream? Now, this is just off a government website, and look, the great Australian dream is the desire for every Australian to own their own home. So look, and everyone who's lived here for probably at least 10 years would know that basically everyone knows the Australian dream as being able to own their own home. And it's obviously to have a family and grow up that way. Look, it's a great way to think. It's a great way of life, I think. Look, I obviously grew up in a family home, and it was probably one of the best luxuries I think I've ever had in life. So one of the best things I think about Australia that I think this way, especially for the right reasons. But look, you continue along with obviously thinking about the Australian dream, or let's say searching it, you'll see continual headlines saying things like this: the great Australian dream is dead, the year the Australian dream died, and things like that. But really, like, what are the numbers behind this situation? Now, look, this is probably going to sound a bit grim, but you'll see here, this is just off the ABC and the ABS, the average income needed to afford a house in each capital city. So those numbers are just absolutely ridiculous if you look at that. So look, Darwin is the cheapest in all of Australia, and I'm not putting down Darwin, but most people don't want to live in Darwin. Most people want to live on the East Coast, or probably Perth or somewhere like that. And it's simply because of work. It's not actually, I'm not saying because of livability. Look, I love fishing. I'd love to fish the Mary River and catch barra every day, but I simply just can't because I need to work, and I need to obviously, be where I'd say a lot of the money is. But those numbers are just incredible. So it obviously looks a little bit dire when you look at those sorts of numbers, especially Sydney, when you see 293,000 there. That's more than an average doctor would earn. Look, another thing too is, this is just off the ABS, and this is just home ownership rate by age group. So, look, with the Australian dream, a lot of people are particularly talking about it. It's not really your boomers or your silent generation, should I say, or your lost generation really that are talking about it. It's really your younger people. It's particularly 40 and under. And you can see here both of the graphs it's basically every graph there of someone who is young has slidden down basically, like, I'd say at least 10 to 20% over the last 50 years. So you can see the bottom three by 2021 there are basically all people under 40, particularly the people that are under 30 happen to be the worst out of all of them. Obviously the older people aren't affected because most of them either own their homes outright or have a very little mortgage on their home. So that does tend to help a lot of people too. Not only that too, but look, over time, obviously, look, here's just owner occupiers and owners with mortgages. That's your kind of dark blue and your light blue line. So obviously people who own their homes outright has gone down, but it's still about 30%, which is quite good. And obviously people with mortgage have gone up. And then you can see as well, you've got, your renters from private landlord there that's gone up, and then your renters from your actual government housing gone down. So despite the government actually saying they're doing anything about helping public housing, this is actually from the ABS, and you can just see year after year after year, the housing stock has gone down. So don't believe any of that. They are complete liars. As what I'll show here is, this is actually showing in this final graph of home ownership. These are percentage of households that own a home with or without a mortgage, and you can see that's just plunging there. It's not plunging like as much as this probably graph wants to show. It's just simply because it's got such a small, variables on your left-hand side of the graph there. But you can see it's slowly sliding down. It's simply because of the price of things, and also just incomes don't match up to prices. But what you'll notice here is that people that genuinely do own homes are tending to get quite wealthy off it because they're obviously using the equity, they're upgrading their home, and then they're selling it for more and then upgrading again and doing the same thing. So that's what this graph won't show. Look, the other issue, and look, in my opinion, this is probably the biggest issue in terms of, should I say, getting into the housing market in the Great Australian Dream. It's actually saving for a deposit. So look, about in the 1970s and 80s, really, you could basically buy a home off, 3 to 4 times your salary outright. I don't mean a deposit, I mean completely outright. But if you look here alone, there's pretty much every Australian city here, main city, should I say, pretty much averages, I'd say, somewhere around that 6-year mark. And most of those are dual couples that are actually saving for that as well. So that's quite a little bit of a concerning thing. It's quite crazy because that's just a deposit, and that's saying also current levels to save for a deposit. And mind you, in 6 years, properties are going to be more expensive. So it's probably more like 8, maybe 9 years, because by the time you save up that deposit, prices would have gone up again, which also means because prices have gone up, stamp duty is also more expensive. So look, that's another thing just to consider. You can see here alone, look, back in 10 years ago, that was probably averaging around, I'd say maybe 4.8 or something like that, and now it's around 6. So that's what, like, maybe close to a 25% increase. So if you go 25% on 6, that's close to probably 8 years or so. So I'd say, look, that's probably what you're looking at. So that's another thing just to consider with the numbers behind the Great Australian Dream. So look, I'm going to get into a case for why the Great Australian Dream is dead. Now, look, first of all, if you just look at this graph here, and this is again from the ABS, you'll see the house price to income ratio, and that's your basically blue line there. And you can just see basically over your last, should I say, this is probably about 30 years or so, it's just gone crazy. So since kind of the late 80s, it's gone from about, look, 2.5 to 3 times median income to, look, that's showing there that it's over 16. Look, it's not quite that high. What this is doing is it's actually showing net income, but if you go gross, look, it's about 8 to 12 depending on the city you're in. Look, Sydney obviously is about 13 at the moment, but that's, look, obviously a reason why the Great Australian Dream is dead at the moment. Look, another one is your cost of living. It's just ridiculous what's going on lately. And look, I blame the government 100% for this because they are literally the ones who create inflation. People don't create inflation, governments do, because governments are the ones who release more money into the economy and inflate the price of everything. So here's a just good, hard working lady. Just to the right here, you can see this is just a article off the ABC, and it's just saying how the cost of living crisis is taking a toll on people. And look, a lot of that again is to do with inflation. So what you really want is real wage growth, and we're actually in negative. We're actually in a negative per capita GDP as well at the moment, which is probably really how they should look at it. So people are actually getting poorer with their money as compared to a couple of years ago, and I'm sure everyone feels that. Look, you can't even get, the guy who used to do the feed your family for under $10 has been very quiet lately because you can no longer do that. You can't even do that if you buy a whole chicken now. They're like, I think, about 12 or 15 bucks now. So it's just crazy with the cost of living too. So that's another reason why the Great Australian Dream's dead. Look, there's also... Look, there's a few things I want to say to a few other people as well here. And look, there are other reasons that I think people do need to consider why the dream might be dead for you. And these are reasons. Some are within your control, some aren't. But the first one is you do not want to move out of the neighborhood. Now, I obviously don't completely subscribe to this because I think you do need to make sacrifice to get somewhere in life. But some people can only live in the neighborhood for certain reasons. So I understand that. Another reason might be you refuse to try a new affordable region. Look, a good example might be you might be from the hills in Sydney and, like, let's say Bella Vista, and you might only want to live there, but you could afford to live in Seven Hills, which literally is across like one of the main roads out there, and you don't want to live there. So that could be another reason. The final reasons are you don't have enough income, you do not have a deposit saved, which are very relevant reasons, especially in your major capital cities. Obviously very expensive to get in, and secondly, if you're renting, it's extremely hard to save up for a deposit. And finally, you don't want to sacrifice what's required. And what I mean by that is, I don't mean necessarily that you can't have any fun or anything like that. I mean, consider like what are real expenses that you need, that are needs rather than wants, and consider, for example, not going out for a Wagyu beef dinner every third night of the week or something like that. That's what I mean by it. Look, not only that, but I do want to consider like people watching this as well, because I do understand that people, the Great Australian Dream is dead for some people, and I do feel sorry for these people, and these are some of the reasons I've come across in the past. One might be you have a very uncontrollable situation in your life, and that might mean you have to take care, for example, of a family member, and you have no choice but to do it to keep them alive and keep them well, and I do feel sorry for people with that. Another one is you have a history of bad credit, and I don't mean just bad, I mean very bad, because bad credit you can get around with kind of your second and third tier lenders. But look, if that's your own doing, I don't feel as sorry for you. But if you, for example, might have entered a partnership or entered into an agreement with a family member and they stuffed you over and this gave you that situation, I do feel very sorry for you, because that is pretty uncontrollable, especially if you were young and kind of coerced into it. The other reason might be a major accident or incident's occurred. So look, if you sit in any of those situations, look, I do feel sorry for you, and I do hope that things improve, and hopefully you can get out of that, and hopefully see some good light at the end of the tunnel, and possibly get into the Great Australian Dream in the future. Look, another thing I think just to say is, look, I'm going to make now a case as to why the Great Australian Dream is alive and strong. And look, the biggest thing I think you need to have here is to change your mindset. So the big thing I see in Australia and a lot of the Western world here is that we have, and it's done by the media and the government almost, especially, particularly the left-wing government, the far left. I don't mean the hard-working left, your typical old-school left. I mean your far left who just don't want to work and think everyone can live in a poppy field and play together and we're all equal, because it's just not the case. So, and what they'll often say is that we're all equal, and that everyone rich is evil. But how can that be the case? Would they say the same thing about, let's say, a success, maybe like Taylor Swift? Would they say the same thing about Anthony Albanese? They're both, I'd say, fairly successful. And like, whilst I don't agree with everything maybe he does, I still think he's done very well for himself. Whether I agree with everything he does or not, like, well done to him. He's come from a very working class background and got to somewhere. So the thing I think is, just don't have tall poppy syndrome. Look, the thing is, a lot of the wealthy actually contribute a lot of the tax, and a lot of them have actually worked and come from nothing and become something. So don't have tall poppy syndrome. Instead, have an aspirational mind. And what I mean by that is, years ago, we used to look up to people as like, wow, this guy's so successful. How do I become like him? How do I learn off him? Have that mindset. That's what you need to get into the Great Australian Dream now, especially from a working background. Look, I've achieved that, and it's not because I've whinged. Look, I know people who were given a house off their parents and given handouts, and I got, look, pretty much none of that. But I mean, like, yeah, I had a house over my head to live in, which was great, but I had to work for everything I got. And look, the way I did that is I just worked hard and aspired to be someone who could do that, and that's what you have to do as well. Now, look, the case of why it's not dead is, look, you don't actually have to live in North Bondi or Bellevue Hill or Chirac or New Farm or somewhere like that. You don't have to live in Peppermint Grove either if you're in Perth, okay? Look, here's an article, and this is just from the Sydney Morning Herald again, and it's just an article of someone saying, I never wanted to live here, now I never want to leave. And it's someone who's actually moved away, and I'm pretty sure this article was someone who moved to the Central Coast or something like that and tried something new. And they're actually in a decent suburb too to buy in. So look, it's hard to move somewhere you've known, and I get it, but to get in the market and get ahead, you have to sacrifice some things, okay? Look, there are actually also, another reason it's not dead is there's actually regions they're under $600,000, okay? So both of these areas, and I don't mean just regions in terms of regions where you can just buy a house, because you can buy a house still for under 200,000 if you want in Australia, but I don't recommend buying there because they don't perform long term, and you're pricing yourself out of the better markets longer term. But there's regions that have performed well under $600,000 that have done 7 to 9% capital growth over the last 40 years, and both of those areas are Perth and Geelong at the moment. You can still pick up suburbs for that if you know where to look and how to look, should I say. So it's definitely not dead, because a general person can afford that on general income, I'm telling you right now, and save for a deposit too. Again, look, the market is not only Sydney and Melbourne. As I said, here's a graph on the top right of the Sydney median property price, and this is just from Property Update off CoreLogic, and you can see here capital city houses are nearly $1.5 million in Sydney. Then you can see in Geelong about 730,000. In Geelong, again, you can pick up for even less than that. As I said, it is cheap. You can get to 600,000 in Geelong and even under, simply being because it is still a developing area, and it's also a few market cycles, about 2 behind Sydney and about 1 behind Melbourne roughly. So you can actually buy a suburb in Geelong for about 450,000, which is incredible. We can still buy brick veneer homes there. For people that want to know this suburb, check out some of my other videos. You'll find out where it is. I highly recommend checking out the Geelong video, or maybe some of my shorts on the cheapest suburb worth buying in Australia. But look, that's very affordable. I'm going to demonstrate to everyone why. Here's this is just CommBank's borrowing power. And what I've done here is just gone off a very average income of a family here. So 2 of us with 2 kids, and you're wanting an owner-occupied home to live in. The husband earns $60,000 a year. The wife works part-time and earns $40,000 a year. Look, maybe the husband might work full-time and earn $100 a year. That's okay too. You could chuck that in, you get the same result. Or if it's more, that's good too. But I'm showing you here that even on CommBank, who is one of, I'd say, the more restrictive lenders because it's a tier 1 lender, you could easily get into a $450,000 house as I described above. So let's not think that this is unachievable, because I'm telling you right now, it is achievable 100% if you get yourself in the right mindset. So look, have an aspirational mindset, because you can achieve it, and you can have a great family life in a home in a good area of Australia with jobs. So if that's you, please reach out, because I can definitely help you in that regard. Let's get into how to reach the Australian dream. And for everyone watching, I hope you've reached this part of the episode, because you're obviously really thinking about how to do it now. So look, obviously, first of all, with reaching a dream, and a dream of, I'm just saying for the standard person, it is difficult. So look, I've just put a photo in here of a person climbing a mountain, because that's a hard thing to do. And I'm telling you, it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it at the end of the day. So the easiest thing to first of all do would just to ensure that your income stacks up. Now, what I mean by that is check what your actual incomes are, and that might be you personally, or you and your partner's income together. Just use a borrowing power online like the CBA one that I did, and it'll either show you if you can get in the market or not almost straight away. Give or take about 10% there, because look, a real person in the bank will be able to tell you exactly what you can borrow. But look, if you don't earn enough, just seek to earn more money if possible. And also, if you can as well, learn a new skill. I accidentally said school there, but that's a spell check thing. So learn a new skill, maybe take a raise, or otherwise move and get that pay rise, because it's really important. Look, it might only be a 5 to 10K pay rise or something like that, but if it helps you get in the market, it'll set your whole life up. So just consider that too. Look, another thing as well is just budget carefully. And people, are shocking in Australia with this. Aussies are probably one of the worst in the world with budgeting, seriously. Like, I have friends who are terrible at it, and I talk to them every week, and it's so hard to get this through to people. But look, I say to people, look, aim to save the deposit within 2 to 3 years. And it's simply because the more and more you leave it, the harder and harder it gets. Now, obviously, if it's very hard for you, I understand if it takes more, but really push to save that deposit. The second thing I'd say is, to achieve that, budget week to week very strictly. So, and again, move if you must. And what I mean by that is, if you're renting a house for, let's say, $800 a week, just move 3 or 4 suburbs away where it might be $200 or $250 cheaper and maybe a little bit of an older house. But really, like, if it helps you get a roof over your head and actually to own something, that's going to help you longer term. So sacrifice it for a couple of years or however long you need to. Like, you don't need to be living in this most swish place all the time. Like, come on. The third and final thing, and this is where probably a lot of people come unstuck, is leave a 15% buffer week to week. Now, it sounds like a lot, but the reason you do that is because in case of inflation. That's the reason you do that. Because people in the past that I know have done everything right, but they haven't left a buffer. So they've saved and should I say, intended to spend a certain amount, then grocery prices, rent, and electricity, water went up 15%. And also in their insurance too, like health insurance was up, I think 30 or something like that. It's crazy. Car insurance is similar. So there's certain things you can't control. So that's why you leave the buffer. It's not because, you need to have, you just need to be overly conservative. It's being conservative simply because there are things that are out of your control. That's the reason. What I say with that as well is focus on needs rather than wants. So look, again, a need, and I've said this in previous episodes, a need, for example, is filling your car up with fuel every week to get to and from work or pick your kids up from school. That's a need. A want, for example, is going to Korean barbecue, eating Wagyu beef every week, going out for 3 lunches on work break with a colleague every single week. That's a want. You don't need to do that. So maybe if you're doing that 3 lunches a week, cut it to 1. You don't need to. I'd personally cut it to 0 or maybe 1 every month or something like that. But don't focus on your wants. Focus on your needs, because that will help you with budgeting. Look, once you've got that in order, really what I subscribe to is contact a mortgage broker. Now, look, the reason for this is because everyone comes from a different situation. You might be a company owner, you might be an ABN holder, you might be an ABN holder who's just simply maybe a landscaper or gardener or something like that, which is cool. It's something helping a lot of people, and I commend all the people who use their hands to work in Australia, because we need more of them. But you might even have a couple of kids. You might, for example, have a situation where your income's really going to increase over the next couple of months and you've just got that pay rise. So the reason you contact a mortgage broker is because all these different lenders have all these different kind of solutions and, should I say, lending that they can adhere to for different reasons. So that might give you that extra borrowing capacity that can get you in maybe 6 to 12 months earlier, which is so important when getting in the market, because if you're in and you're paying down that loan, and especially if prices start to rise, you're not really affected by that, and you're not affected by rent rises either. You're affected by interest rate rises, don't get me wrong, but we have very strict lending. We've got a 3% buffer at the moment, so if you can afford the mortgage and the brokers say you can definitely afford it, I'm telling you. Just be careful with your spending, obviously, and yeah, just consider that, but definitely contact a broker. They're very good at what they do, especially if you've got a good one. And look, I use a broker all the time, so if you want to take it from me, I have good recommendations, so just reach out if you need any of them too. Finally, look, use a buyer's agent. Now, obviously I am one, and I'd love to help everyone who's watching this episode, but these are the main reasons why you'd use a buyer's agent. Look, obviously you can do it yourself, but if you haven't got all of these 3 things together, don't do it. So first of all, don't do it unless you have 10,000 hours of experience in real estate. Now, 10,000 hours is a lot, but if you don't have that, you're not going to know what to do. Second of all, if you don't have the time or know-how. Now, time or know-how is 2 things, but time is you don't have the time to visit, at least 15 homes every week. And the know-how is you don't know how to negotiate, because people will play games with you in this game. It's what they're trained to do, and a lot of agents are very good at it. And the final thing there is if you find financial situations very stressful. So look, if you found purchasing a car stressful and the price you're paying for a car, you're going to find purchasing a home 10 to 20 times more stressful, because that's roughly the price of a home compared to a house, right? So don't do it if you find that all these stressful. Now, look, look, much to obviously me wanting to help you, I have all of these things, and I am a very unemotional being when coming to buying assets, especially houses, or the intention of buying it for a family, because I know how much it's going to affect someone long term. So look, even for people with low budgets, who can afford a $450,000 house or more, please reach out to me, because I genuinely can help you get in the market. Obviously, you're going to need probably about $70,000 to $75,000 saved or equity of some sort. So if you do have that, please reach out, because I actually can help you, and I can recommend brokers who can get you in to the market of that. And just especially for a family who needs somewhere to live that's not a bad area to live, reach out to me, because I can genuinely help you and get you great Australian dream and that great family home and your family, a good life, that life that I guess probably most of us have had. You can give that to your kids and your family, or maybe if it's just you in the future, you and a partner, maybe even too. So please reach out, and look, I thank you all for watching this video, and I'm going to get into some of the best suburbs in more regions as discussed previously in future episodes. So stick around for that in future episodes, and please just subscribe to the channel if you get the chance.